Hey everyone, today's movie is based on an unforgettable true story. Imagine a loyal dog who waits at an airport every single day, believing her owner will come back. In 1977, at Moscow Airport, where we meet a man named Igor, who couldn't be happier. After years of hard work, he'd finally landed a job overseas. But he wasn't traveling alone. By his side was Palma, his incredibly smart and loyal female German Shepherd. Before boarding the flight, Igor showed his boarding pass to a flight attendant named Nina. But after checking his documents, Nina said, "I'll also need Palma's medical certificate before she can board." Igor searched through his passport and bags, only to realize the certificate had gone missing. Nina told him there was a veterinary clinic inside the airport where he could get a replacement. She even promised to delay the flight if she could. Hearing that, Igor immediately rushed Palma to the clinic. Unfortunately, after examining her, the veterinarian discovered that Palma had otitis, an ear infection. Because of that, the doctor refused to issue a medical clearance until she fully recovered. Desperate, Igor even offered the doctor extra money to sign the certificate anyway. But instead, the doctor angrily threw him out. Completely out of options, Igor rushed back to Nina and begged her for help. He pleaded, "Palma has no one else in the world. I can't leave her behind. I'm not going on vacation. I worked so hard to get this job overseas. If I miss this flight, I'll lose everything." He became so desperate that he nearly dropped to his knees. Seeing Palma's innocent face, Nina's heart softened. She was just about to make an exception, but at that moment, the airport security chief, Yorina, stepped in. Nina tried to explain everything, but Yorina refused to listen. She firmly replied, "This is an airport, not a circus or a zoo. Without the proper paperwork, no animal is boarding this flight, and you can't leave her here either." At that moment, Igor realized he had no other choice. With a heavy heart, he took Palma to a quiet corner of the airport. Looking into her eyes, he whispered, "I'm so sorry, but I have to leave you." Then he pulled a ball from his pocket and threw it across the pavement. The moment Palma ran to fetch it, Igor rushed onto the airplane. A few seconds later, Palma happily returned with the ball, but her owner was gone. As the plane slowly started taxiing toward the runway, Nina noticed Palma sprinting after it with everything she had. She refused to let her best friend leave alone. She ran so fast that she suddenly ended up directly in front of the aircraft. The pilot immediately hit the brakes. Palma stood there barking desperately, as everyone on board noticed the heartbreaking scene. Everyone except Igor. He stayed quietly in his seat, never looking back. His silence became his answer. Moments later, the plane took off, leaving Palma behind forever. She kept staring into the sky long after it disappeared. She still believed her owner would come back for her someday, but she had no idea he'd abandoned her for good. Soon, airport security guards spotted Palma and started chasing her. Frightened, she ran into an old hangar and hid. Inside, an airport mechanic named Sergey was working. When the guards asked if he'd seen the dog, he pretended he knew nothing. After they left, Sergey looked into Palma's tear-filled eyes and immediately realized this poor dog had been through something heartbreaking. He told her to stay there while he went to get some food. But then, Palma heard another airplane. Without thinking twice, she dashed back toward the runway. Deep down, she still believed her owner might finally be coming back. At that same moment, another flight was preparing to land at Moscow Airport. The plane was being flown by Vyacheslav. On board was his 9-year-old son, Kolia, who still hadn't recovered from losing his mother. Just as Vyacheslav was about to land, Palma suddenly ran onto the runway again. With no time to react, he was forced to pull the aircraft back into the air. One of the passengers, a government minister, was furious. After the plane finally landed safely, he angrily lashed out at the airport authorities, saying they'd embarrassed him in front of his foreign guests. Yorina calmly assured him, "Don't worry, that dog will be removed from this airport very soon." Meanwhile, Palma stood near the arriving planes, carefully watching every passenger who stepped off. She still believed, maybe this time, Igor had finally come back for her. But sadly, she had no idea that the man she loved most had already left her forever. Just then, the airport guards returned once again. This time, they surrounded Palma from every direction, leaving her with nowhere left to run. The guards announced that they had been given orders to shoot Palma on sight. They slowly forced her backward and locked her inside an airport shuttle bus. Nina and Sergey rushed over, desperately trying to stop them, but the guards refused to listen. One of them coldly replied, "This is an airport. Our orders are clear. If we see that dog on airport grounds, we shoot." Watching everything from a distance was Kolia. Seeing Palma trapped and terrified broke his heart. He quietly climbed through one of the bus windows. At first, Palma backed away nervously, but Kolia slowly approached her, spoke gently, and earned her trust. Then he unlocked the door. The moment it opened, Palma bolted to freedom. The guards were furious. They started yelling at Kolia for helping the dog escape. But before things escalated, Vyacheslav arrived. He calmly stepped in and said, "He's my son. I'll handle him. You can go." The guards finally backed off and left. Later, Vyacheslav met with Yorina, who immediately scolded him for the dangerous landing. She even snapped, "You should have run that dog over with the landing gear." Vyacheslav firmly replied, "At that speed, we couldn't tell what was on the runway. If it had been a moose instead, it could have caused another disaster like the one years ago that nearly killed everyone on board." Irina didn't appreciate his tone. She warned him, "Don't speak to me like that. If your performance doesn't improve, you can forget about ever flying international routes." With a tired voice, Vyacheslav admitted that ever since his wife passed away, his entire life had fallen apart. His son was struggling with the loss, and because of everything happening at home, he couldn't stay focused at work anymore. Hearing that, Irina's anger faded. She realized she'd been too harsh. Softening her voice, she apologized and said, "In a few months, you'll be assigned your first international flight. Start preparing now." For the first time in a while, hope returned to Vyacheslav's face. That night, Vyacheslav and Kolia moved into a new apartment, but Kolia barely spoke to his father. He blamed him for never spending enough time with the family. Deep inside, he even believed his father's obsession with work had played a part in his mother's death. Only after losing her had Vyacheslav finally brought him to live together. Still angry and heartbroken, Kolia quietly sneaked out in the middle of the night and headed straight back to the airport. He tried buying a plane ticket, but the woman at the ticket counter refused. "Where are your parents? I can't sell a ticket to a child traveling alone." Determined to leave anyway, Kolia secretly slipped toward the runway by blending in with another family, but a flight attendant spotted him. He ran, dodged security, and finally hid beside the landing gear of a parked airplane. Then, Palma suddenly appeared. She began barking loudly. Her barking caught the guards' attention, and they immediately spotted Kolia. With no choice left, he had to run. Ironically, the dog had just saved his life. The next morning, Kolia and Palma were found sleeping side by side. Vyacheslav finally located them. Relieved but angry, he scolded Kolia for disappearing. Because he'd spent all morning searching for his son, he'd almost been late for work. As he grabbed Kolia's arm to take him home, Palma stepped between them, barking protectively until Vyacheslav backed away. Just then, the airport mechanic Sergei stepped in. "Go fly your route. I'll take care of Kolia until you get back." Vyacheslav reluctantly agreed and rushed to his flight. He was already running late, and Irina was on her way to inspect why the plane hadn't departed. Luckily, his fellow crew members distracted her, just long enough for Vyacheslav to slip into the cockpit and save his job. Meanwhile, Sergei prepared breakfast for both Kolia and Palma. Smiling, he said, "Besides you, Palma doesn't let anyone get close to her." Then he added, "She actually saved your life. If you'd hidden inside that landing gear during takeoff, you never would have survived at that altitude." A little later, Nina arrived with food. It turned out Sergei was her father. Instead of greeting him warmly, she immediately scolded him because his doctor had forbidden him from drinking coffee. Their playful argument even made Kolia smile. Suddenly, another airplane engine echoed across the airport. Just like always, Palma sprinted toward the runway. Confused, Kolia asked, "Why does she do that every single time?" Nina finally told him the whole story. She explained, "A man named Igor abandoned Palma here. Since that day, every time a plane lands, she believes her owner has finally come back for her. That's why she runs to every flight." Hearing that heartbreaking story, Kolia's eyes filled with tears. He gently sat beside Palma and whispered, "Just like you, I miss my mom every single day." The next day, Kolia visited the airport records office. He asked for Igor's address, but because of privacy rules, the employee refused to give him any information. Kolia explained, "I just want to send him a letter, so he'll come back and take Palma home." Around the same time, another flight landed. As usual, Palma rushed toward the arriving passengers. Then she spotted a man whose silhouette looked exactly like Igor's. Without hesitation, she chased after him all the way into the terminal. But when she finally caught up, she realized he was just a stranger. At that exact moment, security guards spotted her and threw a capture net. Before they could catch her, Kolia cleverly distracted them. Using the confusion to her advantage, Palma escaped once again. The chase threw the entire terminal into chaos. Passengers panicked. Luggage was knocked over. After a frantic escape through the airport, Kolia and Palma finally managed to lose the guards and hide in a safe place together. Just then, a female airport employee quietly approached Kolia. She handed him a piece of paper with Igor's home address and whispered, "Take this and leave through the back exit. No one will see you." Palma's loyalty had touched her heart, and she simply couldn't ignore it anymore. Meanwhile, after returning from his flight, Vyacheslav received devastating news. His international pilot license had been revoked. The dream he'd worked toward for years had disappeared in an instant. A few moments later, Irina walked over. Frustrated, she blamed Kolia and Palma for all the negative attention the airport had been receiving. Passengers were filing complaints every day. Then she made Vyacheslav an offer. "Help us capture Palma, and I'll make sure you get your international license back." After a long pause, he reluctantly agreed. Soon, Vyacheslav arrived at the place where Kolia, Nina, and Sergei were with Palma. But he wasn't alone. He had brought professional dog catchers with him. As they grabbed Palma, Kolia screamed for them to stop. Nina desperately tried to intervene, but no one listened. In the end, they dragged Palma away. It was heartbreaking. As she was pulled farther and farther away, Palma kept looking back at only one person, Kolia. Watching her disappear shattered his heart. At that moment, Kolia completely lost trust in his father. Furious, Nina handed Vyacheslav a letter. It was the very letter Kolia had written for Palma's former owner. It read, "Your dog, the one you left behind, is still waiting for you at the airport every single day. She watches every arriving flight, hoping you'll come back. She's smarter than any dog I've ever met. Please, come take her home." At the bottom, Kolia had written one final sentence. Whether it's a person or an animal, losing someone you love hurts exactly the same. Reading those words hit Vyacheslav harder than anything else. He finally realized he'd made a terrible mistake by separating Kolia from Palma. Then he looked outside and spotted Kolia walking away alone in the pouring rain. He instantly knew where his son was going. This time, instead of stopping him, Vyacheslav pulled up beside him in his car, smiled, and said, "Come on, let's go bring our partner Palma home." And together they raced off to rescue Palma. Meanwhile, Palma wasn't giving up either. Inside the dog shelter, she noticed dozens of other dogs locked in tiny cages and being treated terribly. Using her incredible intelligence, she managed to open a window. Then, instead of escaping alone, she freed every dog in the shelter. Within moments, chaos erupted. Dogs ran in every direction, while the catchers desperately tried and failed to stop them. When Vyacheslav and Kolia finally reached the shelter, Nina met them outside. She smiled and said, "You're too late. Palma already escaped." The news crushed them. Neither of them had any idea where she could have gone. "I know exactly where she'll be." The next morning, they rushed to the airport. At first, there was no sign of Palma. Then suddenly, Kolia spotted her running toward them from the distance. Everyone smiled with relief, but just like always, Palma ran straight past them and headed for a newly arrived airplane. She carefully watched every passenger stepping off, searching for the one face she'd never stopped believing in. But once again, Igor wasn't there. Her hope faded all over again. Wanting to find Palma's real owner, Vyacheslav contacted a reporter and shared her incredible story with the news. The emotional report spread quickly across the country. Irina, however, was furious. She warned him, "After this, you'll never fly an international route again." But just then, the city minister called her. He had seen how popular Palma's story had become and decided to use it to boost his own public image. Not long afterward, he arrived at the airport, publicly praised Vyacheslav, and announced to the media, "If anyone knows Palma's real owner, send him here immediately. She's still waiting for him." Although his motives weren't entirely sincere, his public support had one unexpected benefit. Vyacheslav got his international pilot license back. As time passed, Kolia and Palma's friendship grew stronger than ever. At the same time, the distance between Kolia and his father slowly disappeared. Their broken relationship finally began to heal. But inside Palma's heart, nothing had changed. Days turned into months, months turned into years, and every single time a plane landed, she waited, always believing, maybe this one will bring my owner home. But every flight ended with the same disappointment. Eventually, Palma's story spread across the world. People traveled from far away just to meet the loyal dog who never gave up waiting. Some took pictures with her, others admired her incredible devotion. Later, under the minister's orders, a large protected enclosure was built near the runway, so Palma could stay there safely. But Kolia could tell she wasn't happy. Then one day, Palma watched another dog joyfully reunite with its owner. For the first time, it seemed like she finally understood. Her own owner wasn't coming back. Not because he couldn't, but because he didn't want to. From that day on, Palma almost stopped eating. She became weaker with each passing day. Eventually, her condition became so serious that a veterinarian was called in. After examining her, the doctor delivered heartbreaking news. Palma isn't sick. She's suffering from severe depression. Unless she's reunited with her real owner, it's going to be extremely difficult for her to recover. If this continues, she may not survive. Hearing those words filled Kolia's eyes with tears. For the first time, he realized that sometimes, waiting for someone you love can slowly break a heart until there's nothing left. One stormy night, heavy rain poured over the airport. Kolia walked over to Palma and found her sitting alone in the rain, shivering from the cold. She looked weaker than ever. He knelt beside her and gently said, "Come home with me. Please don't stay out here. You're only getting sicker." But Palma didn't move an inch. She kept staring toward the runway, still waiting. Finally, tears filled Kolia's eyes. He folded his hands and pleaded, "Please come with me. If you stay here, you're going to die." Then, with his voice breaking, he whispered, "Why does everyone I love always leave me? Are you going to leave me too, just like my mom did? If that's true, I won't let it happen. He took off the sweater his mother had knitted for him and gently wrapped it around Palma. Then he lay down beside her in the pouring rain, refusing to leave her alone. The next morning, Kolia slowly opened his eyes. Palma was already awake. She happily licked his face. For the first time, she had finally found someone who truly cared about her. Smiling through sleepy eyes, Kolia softly asked, "Come home with me this time." This time, Palma trusted him. Without hesitation, she quietly stood up and walked beside him. When they arrived home, Nina, Sergei, and Vyacheslav warmly welcomed Palma. Together they fed her, cared for her, and made sure she felt safe. For the first time in a very long while, Palma finally looked at peace. Meanwhile, a sweet connection was also beginning to grow between Nina and Vyacheslav. It seemed like everyone was finally getting a fresh start, but their happiness didn't last long. A phone call changed everything. Vyacheslav learned that Igor, Palma's original owner, was flying back to Moscow to take her home. The room fell completely silent. No one wanted to lose Palma, but legally, she still belonged to him. With a heavy heart, Kolia brought Palma back to the airport. Soon the plane landed. Igor stepped off, accompanied by the same ambitious government minister, surrounded by television cameras and reporters. The minister wasn't there because he cared about Palma. He simply wanted the emotional reunion broadcast live, so he could look like a hero. The moment Palma saw Igor, she ran straight toward him. She happily licked his face, just as she had dreamed of doing for years. The man she'd waited for was finally standing in front of her. Watching this broke Kolia's heart. Quietly, he turned around and started walking away. Even Vyacheslav couldn't bear the sight. He approached Igor with an envelope full of money and said, "Please, take this. Just let Palma stay here." But Igor sadly shook his head. He admitted, "Palma was given to me as a gift. Honestly, I never even wanted to take her overseas. But I don't have a choice. If I leave without her, the minister will make sure I lose my job abroad." It became painfully clear. The minister was still using everyone for his own benefit. A little later, Igor boarded the plane with Palma. But suddenly, Palma slipped free from her leash and ran. She wasn't running toward her old owner anymore. She was running toward Kolia. Before she could reach him, Igor caught her once again and carried her back onto the aircraft. Then came the biggest turning point of the story. The pilot assigned to that very flight was Vyacheslav. Just moments before takeoff, he made an announcement. "I'm not flying this plane." Irina stared at him in shock. "Do you realize what you're doing? You could lose your license forever." Without saying another word, Vyacheslav walked out of the cockpit. At the same time, a flight attendant approached Igor and politely said, "Sir, before Palma can travel, we'll need to see her health certificate. Without it, she can't board this flight." The minister immediately exploded with anger and started yelling at Irina. But this time, she stood her ground. Calmly, she replied, "These are airport regulations, and they apply to everyone equally." Hearing those words, Igor fell silent. He looked into Palma's tear-filled eyes and finally accepted the truth. Slowly, he removed her leash. Then, with a bittersweet smile, he whispered, "Go, Palma. Go where your heart truly belongs." The next second, Palma took off running. She raced across the airport, straight into Kolia's arms. The two were finally reunited. Watching the emotional reunion left everyone at the airport in tears. At long last, Palma had found her true home, and Kolia had found the loyal best friend he'd been searching for all along. That's where this beautiful, heartwarming story comes to an end.